Heard Online is back. This is Heard Online number 3. Heard Online are episodes where we look at articles or other types of information that we find, I should say, on the internet, and we take a close look and see what of these articles, etc., are true, what are maybe not so true, etc., etc. We do a little deep dive here, and I think today's article is interesting because to me the story is one of someone who has really found something important in their life and taken a very helpful journey, but maybe doesn't see sleep in this journey the way I would, and I want to thank Veronica actually for bringing this article up. This is in our Slack group. Veronica is someone who's a member of this community. She's shared her success story here, and she's also becoming a coach. So she brought this article up, and let's just jump right into it. Let's take a look at it and see what we can find that I hope will be really helpful to anyone that is tuning in here. So the headline here is why 8 hours of sleep makes you fearless. Sort of a triggering headline right there. We got the 8-hour thing going on, which so many of is it's implied that we should get a certain amount of sleep. It's implied that everybody gets the same amount every night. It's implied that everybody should get the same amount. A lot of problems with these numbers. Just kind of had to say that there. But that's the name of the article. It is by a Terri Cole, and it is from the Huffington Post. And so let's read this. Up here we see that kind of an introduction here. She says, I was in total denial about how being sleep deprived was negatively impacting my physical and psychological health, including my judgment. The less I slept on a regular basis, the more anxiety and less perspective I had. So that kind of sets the tone. And we'll see if reading this article, we find that the headline and the introduction here is aligned with what she reports. Okay, so let's read this. Terri says, now that you've had a week to implement some better sleep strategies, and she's referring to an earlier blog post where her better sleep strategies are exactly what we always hear about, the classical sleep hygiene things. Have you noticed a shift in your mood? Has getting more sleep lessen anxiety and fearful rumination? Question mark. Perhaps you still believe that 5 hours a night is all you need to function at your best, and that sleep has no direct impact on your level of fear, that all those tips and tricks might help other people, but you don't have a problem. What I know about human nature is that we can understand something intellectually, yet that understanding still is not enough to alter our behavior, even when it is in our best interest. In this paragraph, we see an idea that's very common in the sleep universe, which is that there's a big amount of people out there who are voluntarily sleep depriving themselves and don't understand what impact it has on their lives. There is an idea that there are many people out there who sleep less than they quote unquote should sleep, and they're doing this because of various reasons, but they shouldn't do this because they don't realize what impact it has on them. And as I talked about actually in the latest Heard Online episode, was that a study that I conducted. I had it done, but through Amazon. It to me, it really refutes this. I think people have an idea that they should sleep 8 hours, and also in the other part, which it didn't refute, it has nothing to do with that. But this is just my own thinking: is that people who sleep less than they could either have obligations, either they cannot sleep more. Maybe they have 2 jobs and they have small kids, and if you say that you should sleep more, they just kind of slap you in the face. They'd be like, I can't. That's impossible, right? I want to, but I can't. Or it's people that classically a teenager who loves video games, and they know that they may feel more rested if they slept more, but they prefer the video games. I think that those scenarios are very common. Neither of that group will be very receptive to someone who says, like, just sleep more, it's better for you. You don't even understand what you're doing to yourself. And I think it's a very, very, very small group, in fact, that exist out there that for which this message would be would sort of land on fertile ground or be helpful. It's almost a little bit, to be honest with you, what's the word I'm looking for? Condescending. I think this a little condescending to say that you don't sleep enough, and you don't even realize yourself how that makes you feel. To me, it can be a little bit like insensitive to say that, because you're implying that you know more than the person you're talking to about kind of how they feel themselves. All right, but at the same on the same token, I wanted to say this in the beginning, is that in Terry, who I don't know at all, but who wrote this article, um, I have a sense that she to very big extent wants to help other people, right? We're going to read that she transitioned from a career that was quite intense, and she became a psychotherapist. What is it here? She became a psychotherapist. I think she really wants to help people. So I think a lot of what we read here comes from a good place. Okay, so that's the comments on that paragraph. Like, let's keep reading. If you sleep less than 8 hours a night, and my last blog piqued your interest but did not convince you, let me share my own story about how sleep deprivation as a way of life impacted my health and fearlessness. I was a talent agent before I became a psychotherapist. I took pride in the fact that I could run an agency and a triathlon on 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. I was in total denial about how being sleep deprived was negatively impacting my physical and psychological health, including my judgment. Although I knew that 8 hours recommended, I believed I was the exception to the rule. After I was diagnosed with cancer, denial was no longer an option. Nothing will inspire a reality check of every facet of life faster than these two words: it's malignant. I examined how I was living, the ridiculous work hours, the junk I used to fuel my body with caffeine with a side of nicotine, and how little I was sleeping. What I surmised was that much of my balls to the walls way of living was actually fueled by fear and anxiety. The more I achieved, the more fear I felt that I would fall behind or lose what I had gained. The less I slept on a regular basis, the more anxiety and less perspective I had. Then, luckily for me, fate forced me to stop and take a long, hard look at how I was living and how much of my actions were driven by fear. I focused my attention on getting and staying well, which required a conscious decision to implement many of the ideas from my last blog post. I'm not saying that living in a sleep deprived state gave me cancer, but it definitely impaired my judgment and fueled my fear mind. I can conclusively say, as I transformed my health, changed careers, and added meditation and yoga to my regular routine, my fear-filled need to be in perpetual forward motion was replaced by a much happier, less constricted experience. I strive to maintain a balance, which includes sleeping at least 7 or 8 hours a night. When I think back to that decade of my life, I honestly have no idea how I did it, and I'm so grateful I woke up to where I am now. So let's pause there. And when I read this, to me, this was a story of someone who had lived, as she describes, in a state of striving, trying to achieve these goals that we create for ourselves, and seeing that um, we can end up in the cycle where we may get we sign this talent and that was amazing, we get this high, but then immediately after, like, but how can I do that again, how can I repeat this? And we sign another one and we get the high, but then we get the low, and we try more, we try harder. And when we live in this kind of achievement oriented, goal oriented life, it creates a lot of performance anxiety, a lot of striving, and just generally it can make us very feel really unwell, because we're not really uh, having sort of meaningful goals, or we're not doing things that give us a sense of purpose. We're rather just chasing things, right? And to me, when I saw this, and I saw how she had seen this herself, and she had actually switched career paths. She was focusing more on kind of things that were meaningful and how and brought value to her life. She had gone to a career where she wants to help other people. To me, it's not strange at all that she feels less stress, less anxiety, and to me, I don't know how much sleep has to do with that. To me, it's not surprising that she didn't sleep that much when she was leaving that lifestyle, and that she's sleeping more now that she has another lifestyle. But to say that it was the sleep deprivation that was making me anxious before, when so clearly she's describing how her lifestyle was very anxiety inducing, and now she's completely changed her life, and now she's sleeping more. Well, to then say it's because I'm sleeping more that I feel better, to me, I think may not be the case. I think there is so easy to see that there are so many other factors in place here. So that was sort of what I gleaned from that part of the article. But again, I think again, I might repeat this a few times, and I'm repeating it again. I hear it, but again, Terri, very well may only have our best interest in mind. She may truly believe that if she had slept more before, then it would have somehow been beneficial for her. But I think what she writes, what she describes in more detail, tells a little bit of a different story. All right, I've collected some scientific studies and stories that I hope will move you from. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I'm sharing my screen. Very good. Hope will move you from contemplation to action when it comes to getting good sleep. And as you might expect me to say, very, very tricky there, because sleep is passive, and if you take action, getting good sleep, that's probably not going to help us. All right. According to a study published in Sleep Medicine, sleep deprivation is associated with lower self-regard, assertiveness, self-actualization, and positive thinking, all of which, of course, are directly fear related. This link is no longer working, and that in no way implies that Terri had not put in the right link. It's this article that's actually 10 years old, but I think there are some assumptions there, which is that that sleep deprivation caused lower self-regard, assertiveness, self-actualization, and positive thinking, which, as we can say, it wasn't the case. It said that sleep deprivation were associated with these things. And there's a huge difference between association and causation. Like, so my classic example is, let's say, lung problems, let's say COPD. It's strongly associated with ashtrays, but ashtrays are completely innocent. Ashtrays do not cause any lung problems, right? And so I think we can just from the title see that this study had not shown that sleep deprivation caused any of these things. And then this assumption here, all of which of course are directly fear related. I'm not sure. So that was the first study she mentioned. Back to my agent days. In what I thought was my successful attempt at keeping a good thing going, my judgment lowered. The less I slept, the less I believed I needed to sleep. Caffeine and nicotine got me through the day just fine, so I figured I must be okay. I acted impulsively, overreacted to situations, expected everyone around me to read my mind and to have the same lifestyle as me. I blew through a decade of my life. It's all a blur to me now. I never slowed down enough to rationally think about what I was doing, nor the long-term consequences. Again, there is much more to me that can cause you to be anxious or have poor judgment, etc., than sleep here. I think it's a whole lifestyle that merits attention here. All right, we'll continue. In this great post from the Division of Sleep Medicine at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Lawrence J. Epstein, medical director of Sleep Health Centers and an instructor at Harvard Medical School, states that poor sleep or inadequate sleep can cause irritability or stress. You see the word can? It can, but maybe it does, we can also not do that, right? It doesn't say that it does. It doesn't say poor or inadequate sleep causes irritability and stress. And also, he said that chronic insomnia may increase the risk of developing mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. Again, it is like it always is when you review these articles. There is no smoking gun. It is all may perhaps suggests, indicates that maybe, there still to this day, we don't have a single study showing that little sleep or insomnia causes anything really. That said, of course, I think any of us, if we are sort of like just made to sleep less, would it be surprised if we are a little bit more irritable? I don't think so. But again, those people out, in society who kind of voluntarily sleep restrict themselves, they may very well either be having an obligation, or they may choose to be a little bit tired and maybe a little bit irritable because they preferred sleeping less or something like that. And okay, so we talked about that. No causality has been shown or is even suggested by Dr. Epstein. Here's one more fact for you. A study of 10,000 adults in Norway, land of the sleep disrupting midnight sun, found that people with insomnia were 20 more likely to develop a panic disorder, type of anxiety disorder. And this is one of those, when you see that, if you see that as a headline, it can be really triggering and scary. Like, oh my gosh, if I have insomnia, I'm 20 times more likely to develop a panic disorder. But I think what is sort of obvious when you know it, but it's not clear here, is that insomnia is a surface manifestation of anxiety, and panic attacks are anxiety. Like it's like saying if you're anxious, you're more likely to become anxious. If you put it that way, it's like, oh, so then it's just comes from the same place. It's just the same thing. But when you put it in this way, it sounds really scary. Um, and then she does say stress and anxiety sounds like fear to me. I don't know exactly what that's supposed to mean, but I think it is supposed to tie back to the headline that if you sleep less, then you will have more fear. I think this is the idea there. Okay, again, let's travel back. I was never an anxious person, but the nonstop motion and lack of sleep shot my anxiety levels up. Anxiety and fear feed off each other. They exist because of each other. They are each other's host and parasite. The more anxiety you feel, the more fear is dominating your life. Anxiety presents itself because we are afraid of repeating old patterns, ruminating about the past, or of what could happen, projecting fearfully into the future. When we live in the past or the future, we lose the ability to be fully present in the here and now. Time flies when you are nowhere to be found. To me, it's more like they're the same thing. Anxiety is a little bit of a more diffuse fear, but it's a type of fear to me. Um, I was so afraid of losing my success that I went into constant forward motion. Based on my past experiences, of never feeling like I was enough, my fear script, I set out to prove to the universe and my father that they were wrong. It didn't matter who or what got destroyed in the process, as long as I kept up the appearance of having it all together and being a successful businesswoman. Before I knew it, the better part of a decade was gone. To me, this paragraph summarizes everything, right? There was this fear of losing success, the achievement, proving people wrong, maybe driving this business for maybe not the right reason. Maybe, she was trying to be a successful businesswoman to prove people wrong, etc. And it's so easy to see how this leads to a state of not feeling well, feeling unwell, feeling fearful, feeling anxious, right? Again, the more you read this article, the more, to me, it comes out as like sleep or the lack of it is not the culprit. Psychological disorders and unresolved feelings are just as serious as physical diseases. If you find it increasingly difficult to sleep, even though you have tried some of the tips offered last week, please consider seeking professional help to talk out an underlying issues. Um, well, I do think that when we have trouble sleeping, insomnia, struggle sleep, it can definitely help to learn more about it. Definitely agree with that one. You don't need to get a scary diagnosis to decide to take better care of yourself. I hope my story will inspire you to gain clarity about your sleep patterns. If you're sleep deprived, it just might be getting in the way of you actually becoming fearless. If you have a comment or question, offer it up here. Maybe I should comment on this, but it's 10 years old. So we will conclude there. I think, to me, what if I'm to summarize this one, to me, this is a story of someone who has gone through a transformation, and wants to help other people. And the Huffington Post has been quite focused on sleep. I think Ariana Huffington herself is like a proponent of sleep, etc. And so I think it can be easy to have this like rear view mirror, kind of this recall bias, and look at things differently. When you look back and say like, oh yeah, I was sleep deprived. Oh yeah, that's why I had all these struggles. So of course, if people would just sleep more, then they could, then they could feel so much better and be happier, et cetera, et cetera. When in reality, when you read the story, much more to it than sleep. I think, again, sleep had, in my, like, reading this from what I can glean from the article, I think, uh, if somebody had gone back in time and told Terri when she was, trying to blow up her business that, Terri, you should just sleep more. I don't think she would have been receptive to it. I don't think trying to sleep more would have helped her in any way. In fact, she might have had real insomnia if she had tried that. So, just a couple of thoughts. Curious to hear what you think. Veronica included, of course. I'm saying mentioning no, yeah, Veronica, of course, too. But I'm thinking of Kristen, because Kristen always comments on the Heard Online episodes. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. And if you have suggestions for a Heard Online episode, please let me know in the comments, and we shall go from there. Bye for now.